up, Emerge Junior family? My name is Karis, and I am going to be the medic that is with you this weekend, this year at Emerge Junior. So, a recent situation has come to our attention that just like the rest of us, all of the rattlesnakes at Emerge Ranch are outside enjoying the summertime sunshine. So, we have preemptively created a little bit of like a protocol plan for what to do if you yourself or a cute little kiddo near you gets bit by a rattlesnake. A couple of myth busters really quick, just because I know I myself wasn't super educated on this topic before I started researching it. Turns out, out of the 6,000 to 8,000 people in the United States that get bit by rattlesnakes every year, only 5 to 10 of those people die. So that is extremely small numbers of people that die according to how many people get bit. So it is not like a guaranteed fatality. It is not something that's necessarily going to immediately be like sudden death if we don't act. So hopefully that helps alleviate a little bit of fear around this for you. It is still a very critical situation and something that needs immediate attention, but it's not necessarily going to be like an end-all be-all if you get bit. Out of every rattlesnake bite, 20% of them are dry bites that don't actually release venom. And the reason for that is because every time a rattlesnake releases their venom, it takes them a month to refill the supply in their mouths. So chances are they may or may not have venom in them once they get bit. So for all of those reasons, we're gonna go over what to do, how to handle it, what to write down, what information the paramedics are gonna need when they arrive on scene, and what we as an Awaken community are going to be prepared with going into this weekend. So I've created these little pocket buddies. They're the size of a credit card, so they'll fit in your wallet. In my case, they'll fit in my cell phone case or your pocket, whatever you need to carry it around. And I'll be handing them out like candy, so everyone gets one. They'll be laminated, and they're double-sided, and it's just a step-by-step list of exactly what to do in that moment if somebody gets bit. So starting with basics. So you want to avoid exertion. You don't want your heart rate up because that's increasing the blood flow throughout your body and it's spreading the venom faster. So let's say somebody gets bit and they're terrified, so they start freaking out and they're running around all over the place. What you want to do is try to help to calm them down, sit them down, and deep breathe. Just kind of slow the heart rate down as much as possible. Also, try to draw a circle with any pen, marker, lipstick, whatever you have around the bite. And that'll help because for some people, the reaction is to start blistering and you can lose where the fangs actually went in, which is very important. So try to draw a little circle around it just to help mark the spot. Also, you want to hold the extremity below the level of the heart. So think of it this way. If you have a cut or if you're swollen somewhere, you want to hold it up. You elevate swollen things because it shunts all of the fluid back into your body. In this case, you don't want the fluid, which is venom, going back into the body. So you're going to hold it down. So if it's a leg, if it's an arm, if it's a hand, any kind of extremity, hold it down. The only caveat to that is if it's their head. You don't want it below the heart, but maybe level. So just lay them flat. But otherwise, you're going to put it down below the level of the heart. Also, we're calling 911. This is not in any way, shape, or form something we're handling just on our own. You never know, like I said, how much venom got injected. There are some indicators that could help the doctors to find that out, which we'll talk about, but for the most part, it's kind of a guessing game. And the first 24 hours is a wait and watch what escalates for that person under hopefully lots of monitoring systems that they have available at the hospital. So we're calling 911 and we're getting the paramedics there immediately. Just so you know, I've talked to the Campo search and rescue, or not search and rescue, fire and rescue department this week, just like we do with Emerge Conference, the big one. And they have a really excellent system and response time out there. So they've estimated that they could get to the Emerge Ranch within 5 to 10 minutes of our phone call. So even though we're out in a super remote location, there can be a helicopter on scene within 5 minutes of something happening. So we do have support there pretty readily available to us. If a parent is like, no, I don't trust that, or I don't want to pay for it, we're just going to drive this person to the hospital, We really, really discourage that, just because if it does become a critical condition case, they're not going to be able to get to the hospital fast enough to be able to handle that. So we're gonna try to wait for the ambulance as much as possible. Obviously, parents can trump that, but we will encourage them to stay put, and we'll call 911 immediately. No matter what, just call 911. Even if the helicopter shows up and nobody gets in it, it's better for it to be there on scene and ready for us. Also, things to avoid. So these are like the myths and the things you hear about, or the things you see in movies that people do for rattlesnake bites. And yeah, they're dramatic and they're not necessarily helpful. So like the most obvious one is like you see people sucking the venom out of the wound. That's probably the dumbest thing you could possibly do. Because if you even like flossed that morning, your mouth is now open to then get the venom in your bloodstream. So you went from having one rattlesnake bite patient to 2 people that now have venom in their bloodstream. Do not suck venom out of a wound. That's terrible. Also, you're not going to tie a tourniquet. So this is something that I thought you would do immediately, and I was surprised to find out you do not tie the tourniquet, because what that does is it's cutting off blood flow to the healthy tissue too, and there is no way to treat the venom in time that you're not going to be killing off the healthy tissue by the lack of blood flow. Also, because of that, you're gonna have to untie the tourniquet at some point to save that limb from dying from no blood flow. When you untie the tourniquet, you then get like a tidal wave of blood flow. So rather than having a steady trickle of venom going through the body, you have a sudden rush now coming through the body, and it can create a much worse situation. So we're not tying a tourniquet, we're not sucking venom out, we're not using any extractor devices, we're not cutting into it to try to drain the incision. You literally just leave it, sit down, and put it below the level of the heart. It's that simple. Some things that you may not think of that are on this card also, they're on the write it down side. And these are things that are super helpful for the doctors to know, but it's some information that can only really be gathered when you're on scene. So first of all, what type of snake was it? Now, there's like 7 different kinds of rattlesnakes. Don't quote me on that. I think it's like 5, but they all exist in the San Diego area. And some of them, their venom, the symptoms show up within an hour. Other ones, they could have the highest amount of venom in them and you won't get a sign or a symptom for 24 hours before it begins. So for the hospital to know which snake it was, what kind of rattlesnake, it's extremely helpful for them to understand what they're looking for. So I don't expect you to be an expert on rattlesnake types, but if you have your camera phone and you can do it safely without getting any closer to the snake, snap a photo, because then that photo can be taken to the hospital and they can identify the type there. So if you can take a picture, or if you are an expert on rattlesnakes, that's awesome. Also, the number of bite wounds. So not all snakes are just like one and done. Sometimes they like latch on and then let go and then latch again. So if there's multiple snake bites and you were there to see it happen, make note of which one was first, because that's going to be the bite that has the venom in it. So if you can like circle that one and write like number 1 and then number 2 on the bites directly on the skin, because the paramedics will see it, everyone that's caring for that patient will see it that day, then that'll help them to know where to look for the signs and symptoms and which bite mark is the one that's going to have the venom. Also, the exact time that it happened. So time is everything, because after the snake bite, everything is measured in like how quickly symptoms are escalating. So if you can note exactly when on the clock that bite happened, then that really helps the doctors later on. Especially if we end up waiting like 20 minutes before the person gets loaded and taken to the hospital, worst case scenario, it should happen a lot faster than that. Then we know exactly when. And in situations like this with like adrenaline pumping, you tend to kind of lose time. Like 20 minutes can feel like 3. So if the paramedics show up and say, when did this happen? You'll be like, oh, like 2 minutes ago, when in reality it's been like 20 minutes since the bite actually happened. And that's a really big difference in a situation like this. So if you think of it, or if you're reading your card like you should be, you'll know, okay, I'm gonna write down what time it is right now so that they can know exactly how long it's been since they were bit. Last but not least, these are just little things that, like, if the parent is present or if it is the parent themselves and they may pass out at some point, you want to get this information a little bit earlier, and the doctors need to know if they've ever been bit before. So it's possible for, just like with bee stings, where the more times you get stung by a bee, the more likely you are to develop an allergy to it. Rattlesnake bites are the same way. So if somebody has been bit by a rattlesnake before, they're a lot more likely to have a deadly reaction to it this time. So ask the person, has this ever happened before? Last time, how bad was it? What were your symptoms? How long were you in the hospital? Did they give you antivenom? And just mark those things down. And then you can hand that information to the paramedics. They'll probably ask too, but like I said, what if the person like sees blood and passes out? And then no one's able to get that information from them. If you can think of it and write it down for them, that's way more helpful. Also, and we're not gonna get into why because it's complicated, but if they're allergic to horses or sheep, this is something that the doctors need to know. So ask them, are they allergic to horse or sheep? Or yeah, if it's like the kiddo, ask the parent, and just gather all the information that's on the card that you can, and that will be extremely helpful for the paramedics. All that to say, guys, we're gonna have an incredible weekend. There are gonna be no emergencies, no rattlesnake bites. We are all protected in Jesus' name. And preparation for this kind of thing is just the stewardship of our bodies that God has gifted to us. So yeah, well, see y'all out there on Emerge Ranch, and we're gonna have an awesome weekend.